Good afternoon. We'll try this again. Welcome to the Monday, March 16, 2009 informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. And I'll call this meeting to order. First up to bat will be the City Council staff report, and we have updates from Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. I just wanted to give you a brief update on the Commission is working on remapping for the districts for the 2010 election, and before you are two maps. Pardon me while I try to figure this out. Okay. This is the current map that is out there that has been used for previous elections. And you can see over here when you see, if you come down to the Carnegie, anybody who's listening, you can see that the numbers here are the issue. Some are low and some are high in terms of registered voters. Over here in option L, which is the recommended version of the Commission, it has adjusted about 7 precincts, most of which go into the Central District. And they're going to be meeting on March 31st between 6:30 and 8:30 here at the Carnegie, or on April 4th, Saturday, between 10 and noon, looking for public input at those public hearings. Also, there is information on the website at siouxfalls.org concerning the Commission, their minutes from their meetings, electronic versions of the maps, and other pertinent information to let you know. And just also let you know that the council staff has also mailed out to all the registered voters in those 7 precincts who may have those moved to let them know about those public hearings happening later this month. And so looking forward to getting that to completion through those public hearings. Once that has finished, the Commission will meet again and then bring to the Council their final recommendation. At that time, the Council will have 21 days to consider that, decide to either receive it or reject it, and then at the point when you do adopt it, it'll be by ordinance later on this fall. So thank you for that. And then I wanted to give an update. I know we had talked earlier about a special assessment waiver legislation. This was brought to the Municipal League by Council members Litz and Staggers, and that was the current law. Really is to it's for municipalities may waive or reduce special assessments levied against the owner-occupied single-family dwellings if the head of household was 65 years or older or was disabled, or if their annual household income was less than $10,000 per year. The new law, which has been signed by the governor, will change that $10,000 limit to language of the federal poverty level, so that will go incrementally up each year. And then I might switch in order just to give you a final update. I know you all were mailed some of the Public Service Committee's revisions to the Code of Ethics and language that was revised at the last Monday's meeting of that committee. Just to give you an update as a whole, there was some compromises or some language requests from the Board of Ethics to change certain provisions, and one had to do with the record keeping. And the committee did vote to make those changes on the City Attorney's Office and the Board of Ethics' behalf, the request. In addition, it was to clarify some of the language with advisory opinions, and that was done as well. And then there was the deletion of a term for the officials definition in Article 3. And you have all of that emailed to you earlier, and also a memo which has either been emailed to you or given to you or is in your mailbox now of those final changes so that you can look at that before tonight's vote. If you choose to make the amendments from the Public Service Committee, you may choose to do that within a substitute motion, adopting all of those amendments as one package to expedite the process. And lastly, there's the Breakfast Club. I was just going to let you know that there are several conflicts of interest this week. I think with the County Commission has a workshop in Pierre I didn't know about until today. The Sioux Falls School Board also has at least 2 members in Pam Homan who will not be attending. At this point, there are only 5 RSVPs who are people who are outside of the council. And I'm wondering if there's a couple of options. I mean, we could choose to open that group up to more, or perhaps the council may want to consider canceling this meeting. We can certainly contact the 2 speakers who have been invited. One was going to be in Sioux Falls anyway, and the other one lives here. So, but I would feel bad if they showed up to speak to only about 5 people. So I leave that for your discussion. Thank you.
Questions of Deborah. Councilor Knudsen.
Regarding Breakfast Club, again, I realize people's lives are busy, and I myself had not RSVP'd yet, and then was kind of an if it maybe anyway. But I really, in light of the fact that it's Monday afternoon and we have so few coming, I think our best bet for Breakfast Club for this month is to cancel the meeting. I mean, unless all of us. Because obviously those meetings are always open to the public, but even last month we didn't have what you call a huge turnout when we had the Sports Authority topic, and we've had that discussion about going quarterly or monthly, and I think Deborah's comments earlier today in an email are very, very right on, is that we're hosting this year, and if we ourselves can't get there, or a good chunk of us, and like I said, even I had not RSVP'd, and I have more flexibility than the rest of you, I'm concerned for the people who come, let alone from out of town, and present a program. So that would be my recommendation.
Comments? Councilor Jameson.
I just RSVP'd just a few hours ago, but whatever you all together want to do, I'm okay, I guess. If you want to postpone it or cancel it or
Well,
whatever.
I decided to go, but again, I don't think 7 of us is enough to justify having outside speakers. I don't.
Fair enough.
I really don't.
Councilor Costello.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to be there or not. I haven't made that decision yet. But, in the past, we've never had RSVPs to the Breakfast Club. If it worked in your schedule, you went. And so I got to believe a lot of people are just, playing it by day on whether they attend. And whether or not the attendance was good last time around, I guess it seems like the times I've been there, it's been a reasonable amount of people around the table. But I don't know that we want to cancel something that's been on the calendar, 2 days before.
And I think the reason probably that the city clerk's office is asking a little bit for an RSVP, and actually in the past we've kind of tried to get a number, is because the pavilion does prepare us, we do order fruit and coffee and rolls and so forth, so we don't need to know the exact amount for a continental breakfast like that, but it's helpful to know a little bit. But and again, and the turnout last month, the people who were there, participated, and it was a good discussion, and I thought it was a good topic. But I just, this group called Breakfast Club does struggle a little bit as far as, really getting out enough people there to have a respectable turnout.
So when will are we making up our minds here to cancel it then, or are you going to go through with it, or I guess I'm confused as to what exactly is going on.
Is there anyone else in the group that's going? We know Councilor Brown is out of town for a very legitimate reason, so he will not be there. We're hosting, and if only one or one and a half of us even plans to be there, I don't know.
I'm kind of like Pat. I got to play it, off the cuff that day, and it looks like I'm going to be there Wednesday morning. But usually, in the past, I haven't been able to make it. But this one here, I thought that I was going to. So, if you want to cancel it, we better figure out about it now. But I do appreciate what Pat said. It's kind of late in the game to be canceling it. Have we thought about since we're hosting it, having somebody make calls to all the interested parties and kind of roasting them about a little bit,
But emails. The city clerk's office has worked really hard on this. They started working on it ages ago, just lining up very good program, and then then they were sending out emails last week, just trying to get us to make a commitment. So, my goodness, I think they have done a marvelous job for us, and so that's okay. I'll vote to have the meeting, and I'm going to plan to go.
The point I was making is, to my knowledge, in the 3 years that I've been going, I don't ever recall having to RSVP to it. And I think there's a lot of other people in the county commissions and the school districts that probably are not accustomed to that, and they're probably not getting a lot of response back because we've never done it that way in the past.
I have a request also. We always invite all of the school districts who are in Sioux Falls and those who are border or somewhat in the city limits. Would the council consider, could we invite some of the, I hate the term, the bedroom communities, or those little towns that are really close to us and we are more of a regional center? Would you be willing We've never done that in the past, but that would certainly probably help us for the numbers. Okay.
I certainly would have no problems with that, but maybe we should bring that up to the group on Wednesday. Because, we host it, every year, a different organization hosts it and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Deborah, that's to me is a real interesting idea, because there's times we went out to the municipal league and we had that, the top 13 Class A cities or whatever it was. Those are interesting exchanges, and I met people there that I've kept in contact with since then, and I thought that was very, very interesting to listen to somebody else's perspective from another town. Councilor Knudsen.
Well, let's just go ahead, let's go ahead and go, and let's go ahead and keep it on the calendar and go where we can. And again, for the listening public, again, we're talking about Breakfast Club, which is a monthly meeting at Leonardo's Restaurant. It's very open to the public. It's at 7:30 in the morning. We start right on time in the Washington Pavilion for 1 hour. We end right on time. People can leave earlier if they have to because of their work commitment. And the public is always invited to Breakfast Club, and we can invite legislators to join us. It's a legislative update, and any other citizens that are interested in an update about the legislative session. Let's just go for it.
Mr. Costello.
I think we should note that we do take the summers off on that, and so I think this is the last meeting prior to summer. Or is there one more?
No, April and May. April we're going to do like a green topic. In May we're going to go to the zoo.
Okay. Maybe what we should do is revisit the subject of whether or not we're going to do quarterly or if we're going to do the months and then take the summer off. The schedule might need to, but we should do that with the other group as well.
Any other thoughts on that? Very good. Meeting's on then, is that correct? Councilor Knudsen?
And not on a different topic, on the update as far as the districts are concerned, I think that was just a wonderful work by the city clerk's office to send out those postcards to the citizens who are going to be affected in those areas if, in fact, that particular proposal is chosen. And again, as everyone realizes, as the population changes in our city, we do have to just rejigger the districts, the council districts. And so I think that was really wonderful customer service by our staff to send those out. And I think the other thing I'd like to say is that, again, that commission, redistricting commission, has been working for months and months and months and months, and I'll probably forget all of their names, but again, Susan Sabers has been chairing that group, and Vance Goldammer is on that group, Joel Rosenthal, Elaine Roberts, and Roger Broughton. I think I have no, not Roger Broughton, I'm sorry, he's the one I know the least. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Roger Berggren.
Yeah, Berggren. Sorry, excuse me for. I know there's a Roger Broughton in town, and sorry about that. But anyway, I'd just like to thank those people because they have been working for months on this somewhat thankless project.
I agree with you, Dee. It's been kind of a toiling in obscurity type of a thing, And, I was also aware of a couple of the other plans that came up, and I like the one that we have now. Deborah, out of the seated counselors that we have, out of the 8 that we have on here, who besides myself changes district as it is? I mean, I don't think it's going to make any difference looking at term limits and stuff, but just curious.
If the option L is the one that the council chooses to adopt later this year by ordinance, the 2 affected council members will be Councilmember Anderson Jr. and yourself. So those are the 2 that could be affected if it is adopted in option L.
Central. So then I could run against Kermit in the Central District.
I could sit out for a
That would
couple
be
years.
interesting, but I can't run because I'm term limited out. So, yeah. I'd like to run against you, though. That'd be fun.
You'd wear my feet out, Kermit. So in 2000, I didn't get what I wanted on redistricting. This time here, I get shifted around, and then I think when the year 2010 comes around, and my legislative district is going to change again too. And I thought for a guy who stayed in the central part of town, I wouldn't be bothered by that, but that's not the case, I guess. So.
In addition, the charter has 2 provisions that the council must call forward a districting commission and have them redistrict the city. When we have a 15% growth in population, or during the census. And so even though this commission is setting the boundaries with the council for the next 2010 election, when the census comes out in a couple of years, we'll be doing it again. So the 2012 election may have entirely new boundaries.
Yeah, Councilor Knudsen.
Oh, you know what, just back to Breakfast Club, I'm sorry I'm jumping around like this today, I need to get organized in my mind here, is that, we have the city clerk's office has found some very capable lobbyists to speak to our group at Breakfast Club on Wednesday regarding the update of the legislative session. And I would just like to encourage the city clerk to invite David Owen also. He's a very gifted speaker and a very good analyst of legislative events. And if, in fact, his schedule permits, I'd like him to be invited also.
Who's that?
David Owen. He's this tall guy from Pier. We saw David out there for Sioux Falls Business Day, and that's kind of his event. Boy, he was on a roll that day. Very entertaining, very informative, and very much David Owen. Is there anything else here pertaining to those two subjects? Very good. Is there anybody here from the mayor's office today that wants to present? No one coming forward. Audit committee.
No report.
No report. Fiscal committee.
No report.
No report. Land use. Councilor Costello.
Regarding fiscal committee, only because we had this conversation last informational meeting regarding the timeline on the budget. Gail, have you had a chance to review whether or not we can move forward under our existing or? Okay. Okay. You'll let us know. Thank you.
Land use committee.
I don't really have an update, but I think on the 30th, we have a meeting, and I think we have a couple of items on the agenda to talk about, one with Public Works and maybe another, but I don't think we've got a meeting next week at all, right? An informational meeting or
we do.
council meeting because of the 5-month, okay. So just a little heads up that I suppose we'll be meeting after, we'll be meeting on the 30th. I think at 5 o'clock, maybe 4 o'clock. I don't even know. But I guess I just know there's going to be a time lapse before we can get together again, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Thank you, Greg. Public Services Committee.
I don't have any updates at this time. I will ask Councilwoman Knudsen for any updates from the last meeting.
Vernon chaired the last meeting that we were at.
Yes, no, I feel like Deborah Owen has covered our, Board of Ethics very well, and then the other topic we visited with at quite a bit of length as far as just the whole code enforcement issue, and again, it's, a difficult issue for, some people want codes enforced more strictly, and others want them more lenient for their own groups, and it's kind of a tricky topic, but anyway, we had a very good discussion, and Director Cooper was there, and so we'll just kind of continue that discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Next, item 8 is City Council open discussion. Councilor Costello.
On the upcoming UDC meeting, it's on Thursday at 4 o'clock. I will not be able to attend, and I know Councilors Jamison, Litz, and Staggers are on it with me, so I'm looking for a volunteer to maybe substitute for me. Otherwise, because I know we have Board of Equalization, some people may be scheduled for that as well. Deborah could fill in for as an alternate as well.
And then, I'm sorry, that's what
It's at
group?
4 o'clock on Thursday.
But that's what group, CCOG or
UDC.
UDC?
If you're on Board of Equalization that afternoon, it's 1 to 4 as well. So
Yeah, 1 to
just short time
4:30.
to-
Yeah, I'm at
It's
Board
to
of Equalization.
4:30, and so I guess it's Gerald or Dee or
I think-
Kenny or Deborah.
If I may, I think that when you adopted the resolution, I thought Dee and I were first alternates, but I'll go back and pull that, because you did select alternates to
But
represent you.
you've got
I have Board of
Equalization.
Equalization, and, I
You're
couldn't
not.
possibly be there till 5, so I don't feel like I'm available. Otherwise,
No.
I'd be happy to go.
Kenny, are you interested?
If I'm not on the Board of Equalization, I would do it.
And you are that day, though.
Okay.
You're on, Kenny. Okay.
I will be there, but I might be a little bit, depending on what happens there. Thursday, we should be burned up with quite a few of the situations, I would think.
I think that just talking to Kyle today, I think I think basically most of the sessions that are remaining are going to be fairly brief. I mean, they're like 20, 25 items. We moved through quite a few this morning, so I doubt they'll go long, but we're never going to know, so you can't really plan on both, I don't think.
Well, I plan on being to both. I'll just be a little bit late, so if you'd, parlay that information to those folks when you get there. Anything else for open discussion? Councilor Knudsen.
Just regarding the city's green committee, which of course we are part of, leading green is that the, you probably saw the notice that the sustainability indicators meeting has been moved over to our building this Wednesday from 11 to 1, and I believe that Denise will be there. She's representing our city council very nicely with that group, and I try to go when I can, and so I wanted to say that. And then right before I came to work again today, I had a call from the same concerned citizen up in the Norton Froelich area, and still concerned about that business, the OTR, the large tractors, and again, Director Cooper is working on this, but it sounds like now that according to this person anyway, that the business has asked for a change of address, and that very recently 3 semis took equipment out of that building or that business. And again, the concern is, again, all those huge acres of tires, and that the community is concerned about them being just left there. So I will be talking more with Director Cooper about this, but I know they're looking into it, but I'm just sharing the latest call.
I'll let just for your information, I was up there Friday and drove around, looked up there, and there are a lot of tires up there. Even if a semi-load of them leaves, that's maybe 6 tires. They're that big. I mean.
Yeah, and I think most of the semis of equipment left, and I think the tires are pretty much all there, according to this particular neighbor.
Council Knudsen, I think your concern is that they're taking everything of value out there and they're just going to abandon the property with all the.
Well, and that's what the concern is. I mean, that's what the concern is. I'm not making any allegations myself. I'm just repeating from this constituent.
Mr. Anderson.
Earlier last year, I did express concerns to Mark Cotter and Public Works about that area up there also. So it's something that we are aware of, and I would like to know more information on that since that's in my district also. That's something I've been very interested in for quite some time.
Okay, I'll share more after our meeting.
Thank you.
Have you had any conversations with Judy Boosman from the Health Department? I would think that might also be a concern of theirs.
I haven't had any conversations with her yet, but again, this all just started last Monday right before I came to work, and anyway, and so I had an email from Director Cooper late last week, and I know the planning office is working on this, but this is just more information.
It is an issue. There's lots of mice and bunnies and skunks, and it's also a mosquito breeding ground in the springtime because those tires fill up full of water and it's hard to get it out of there. Weeds, there's a lot of thistle. I mean, it's definitely going to be an issue. But I don't know, something inside me just tells me that those tires have got to be worth something to somebody somewhere. And I just can't see them sitting there forever. I mean, I don't know who it is, but then on the other hand, I also am aware of large piles of tires getting struck by lightning and catching fire, and they're real buggers to put out. So it's something we got to keep an eye on, that's for sure. Kenny?
I actually took a little tour of it when it first opened, and basically what the company is doing is selling recycled tires overseas. I guess for new tires, there's a waiting list. And it's been a pretty good business up to this point that I know of. And I'm watching the business grow and change up there. They've been very sensitive to the neighbors' concerns and have tried real hard to, make that aesthetically look quite well up there. So I don't know if we've actually met with the owners of the company or anything to, address any other concerns. But, I do see a company that is trying to work with the neighborhood that they're in. Very
good. Just kind of fishing for a comment. Did anybody here attend the St. Patty's Day Parade? I had family and I was unable to go. I think we got a couple Irishmen on board here too. That's almost sacrilegious, isn't it? Well, is anything else here? Mr. Jameson.
Yes, I just want to update everybody on the community forum on Saturday. Did everybody get that email with the press release? I think everybody got it. I think I've heard from at least 5 councilmen who will be there, as well as the mayor, and a lot of other business groups. If you haven't seen the press release, check your email. But we've got just a whole bunch of people coming from all different types of business associations. And all we're going to do is just talk about new ideas, if there are any. We've got just a chance to think out of the box a little bit, do things a little different, shake it up. These are tricky times for a lot of people. We've got a lot of great things going on, but it's just a chance to maybe all come together and just look at things a little different. It's not a free lunch anywhere involved. Everybody might get a little homework afterwards that they can do, but I'm hoping for a great turnout. The public is invited, encouraged to come. You know, we've got a whole list of chambers, got people coming. Downtown Sioux Falls has people coming. South Dakota Banking Association has people coming. General Contractors of South Dakota, Realtor Association, Home Builders. We've just got Terry Ellis from the Conventions Bureau is coming. We're just going to look at all kinds of things, anything, everything's on the table. We're just going to have a decent, open discussion, and I hope to even rearrange the chairs in here and really create an atmosphere that we can all talk and just have a great open discussion. But again, it's Saturday, 9 to 11, and Denise helped me put together a whole bunch of information and organize this whole event. I really appreciate her help. And I've got commitments from a large group of the department heads that are going to be there. Gene Roenhorst, Mark Cotter, Mike Cooper, Don Carney, Bill O'Toole, I think, is going to try to make it. Probably even somebody off. I hope I'm not. Bob Amundsen's going to be there. You know, we've got a great chance. We've got great people. I think we've come up with some great ideas to help Sioux Falls. And that's our focus, is Sioux Falls, and that's it. It's really it. If there's a topic or an idea that can help Sioux Falls, bring it. If you're a history professor, an economist, a retired economist, anybody, feel free to come and bring your 2 cents. Everything's on the table, I guess, so thank you.
Questions of Greg. Councilor Knudsen.
Not a question for Councilor Jameson, but also just a reminder that tomorrow night around 5:30 with a presentation at 6 at Morningside Community Center that I know Chad is working hard with the neighbors in the Orchard Heights area regarding the concerns they have about the roads and so forth. And I am trying to juggle a couple commitments at the same time tomorrow night, but just a friendly reminder to you guys about that also.
Any other comments on this subject? Very good. Anything else for the greater good here concerning City Council open discussion? Seeing nothing being brought forward, we're going to go into the presentations. And the first thing that I have is something that I get to do, and it's an employee recognition, and we are going to have Denise Tucker get her CMC designation recognition. Denise? So I have to go down there like the mayor does? Is it Mr. Microphone around, or should I just talk?
Actually, while they're going, I can let you know, at this point, Channel 16 is not working. We've had some equipment failure downstairs. And so it's, I'm not sure when we'll have recovery, but they're working on it, just so you know.
Karaoke, yeah. You're worried I'll bust into my rendition of feelings. Today it's my distinct honor to have Denise Tucker, who has completed the qualifications to become a certified municipal clerk through the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. The designation CMC is no small undertaking. It begins with a week-long program each year for 3 years in her neighboring state. It's important to note that Denise was elected as co-president of her class, and as I understand it, was the only person from South Dakota to be nominated in a Minnesota-dominated event. It was founded in 1947. The International Institute of Municipal Clerks is the leading professional association serving the needs of municipal clerks worldwide. Prior to her service in the City Council of the City of Sioux Falls as an assistant city clerk, Denise was a journalist with the Argus Leader for 13 years. And after she left the dark side, she came over, she served 10 years in the South Dakota Army National Guard as a combat medic, achieving the rank of sergeant. And Denise's community involvement includes an active mentor, student mentor for more than 10 years, serves on the CASA Board of Directors, and is the past marketing board member for both United Way and Volunteers of America. Denise, I'd like to present you with this plaque. Supposed to do like that. Thank you, Denise. Thank you very much. Okay, the next presentation we have is the Big Sioux River Flood Control Project update and the 41st Street Bridge reconstruction approach. And this is Eugene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance, Mark Cotter, Director of Public Works. Eugene, are you up first or Mark? Gene drew the short straw. Very good.
Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance. My report will be very short as far as what's going on with the flood control right now. We're still awaiting information from the Corps of Engineers. So the situation that we reported close to 2 weeks ago now is still basically the same, that we will, when we get the information from the Corps of Engineers, we'll probably go into a mode of issuing about $12 million of fixed-rate bonds, which would be actually for the bridge itself. And then we'll figure out how much we need to complete the other projects, and that will be probably done with variable rate bonds also. But there's no change. Like I say, as soon as the Corps of Engineers gives us some indication of the funds that will be made available, we'll certainly make you aware of it. But for now, it's they've got the ball in their court.
Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, Gene, when we discussed those bonds, it seemed like it was imperative that we, pass this right away, so we'll have time to get the bonds underway so we can have construction starting this summer. The way things are right now, does it look like we can still have construction this summer or not?
I guess we better let the engineers answer that question. We can certainly get the bonds done, but whether we'll get it done, it's not going to get done in the time frame we looked at originally. But so with where we're at with the other part of it, I can't answer that.
I can add a couple of comments, Councilor Staggers. And back when we were bringing forth the ordinance for the bond, we were running on a parallel track of with and without either the fiscal 9 authorization dollars as well as potential for stimulus funding. And so some of that has been, some of those variables have actually been vetted through, but the Corps is not, through their headquarters, been able to release what their stimulus funding will be. And so we expect to hear that. In fact, we expected to hear tomorrow, and I just received an email that it'll be next week. But from what we can gather, they're still pushing forward for all of Phase 2, and with the expected bid date of April 30th. And so they're just working through some internal options, but clearly with the stimulus funding that went directly to the Corps of Engineers, that's taken the short-term necessity off for us to execute bonds, which, as you've heard from Director Rowenhorst many times, there was about 5 key variables that we were managing through this whole process, and the longer we wait, the more of those variables actually become reality. So the longer, the better information we have.
Councilor Costello.
Mark, the Phase 2 is about how much of the proportion for the dollars?
The Phase 2 with the levees and the dam is just under $15 million. And then tonight you're going to hear a detailed presentation regarding the 41st Street Bridge, which is approximately $12 million. And so that all those activities, levees, dam, and bridge, have to be done before the flood maps can be updated for that area. And then we'll be talking about, in months to come, Phase 3, which is the diversion channel up north.
So that would be another
$8.5 to $9 million. Okay.
Councilor Knudsen.
Not a question for Director Cotter, but I just am so pleased that Mayor Munson's trip to D.C. a couple weeks ago was so successful, and that we are going to be able to get all of that federal stimulus money for our flood plain project. I mean, I just hope the next 2 or 3 mayors have as good a relationship with our congressional delegation as Dave Munson has.
Okay. Any other questions pertaining to this subject? Chad, were you going to come up and speak?
Yes, I don't have any questions, but I'm going to open up the presentation, if that's okay.
Certainly.
All right. Good afternoon. Chad Hebe with the Engineering Division. During the past few years, you guys have heard a lot of information regarding the flood control project. The flood control project has several key components, which Mark just talked about, one of them being the 41st Street Bridge. Today's presentation is the study that was conducted for the 41st Street Bridge replacement, which is one of the most unique transportation projects the city has undertaken. Key members of the study team are Jason Jenstead and Steve Hoff with HDR Engineering, and Jeff Delores and Tom Berkland with the Engineering Division. The scope of the study included a traffic evaluation, a review of bridge construction materials and methods, and project delivery alternatives. Many of the bridges being constructed across the country are using accelerated bridge construction methods with the goal of delivering projects earlier to the traveling public. Accelerated bridge construction will be further discussed during today's presentation. Another key component of the study is the local and regional bridge contractors. During the study, we reached out to several of them, asking their feedback on bridge construction materials and methods. Last summer, HDR was involved with the construction of the 24th Street Bridge in Council Bluffs, Iowa. This bridge crosses Interstate 29 and is similar in size to the 41st Street Bridge. That project was a showcase project for the Highways for Life program. This program is used for innovative technologies and practices to expedite construction of efficient and safe pavements and bridges. During a trip to Omaha, when we were meeting with the Corps of Engineers, several of us visited the site during construction and got a first-hand view of some of these new technologies they're using. I want to thank HDR, Tom Berkland, and Jeff Delores for all of their work. I also want to thank you for your time today, as today's presentation includes 60 information-filled slides that will probably take an hour to get through. So because of that, I respectfully request that you wait till the end, and then we'll answer questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Jason Jenstead with HDR Engineering.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Heavey and members of the council. We have a presentation today to cover the 41st Street Bridge replacement study. And we have several components to our replacement study that we're going to go through today. Like Chad said, my name is Jason Jenstead. I'm with HDR Engineering. I'm a traffic engineer by trade, so I'll be covering the traffic evaluation portion and the traffic analysis, and then I'll hand it over to Steve, and Steve will cover the bridge method, bridge construction methods and materials, and also some bidding alternatives and contracting methods. Now, the traffic evaluation portion can really be summed up with one question. Should 41st Street remain open during construction, or should it be closed? And to determine that, or to answer that question, we're going to study two build options. 2 lanes per direction on 41st Street during construction, and 41st Street closed during construction of the bridge. And with both of those options, we will also look at user costs. So with the options, what do our daily commuters, what is it costing them to sit in extended delays at intersections and additional fuel? So we'll look into that as well. Okay, our traffic analysis study area. Now, after much discussion and some preliminary analysis, we determined that our study area would be on the south 57th Street, on the north 12th Street, on the west Marion Road, and on the east Minnesota Avenue. And we really believe that everything outside of this study area will remain pretty stable regardless of the option that we choose. But inside, based on the option that we choose, things are going to be pretty volatile. Existing traffic volumes. Now, we did a couple different things with the study. We looked at existing daily traffic volumes, and those are what uses the street for 24 hours in the day. So the daily traffic volumes, and we also did intersection turning movement volume counts during the AM and PM peak hours. And really, those are just the individual intersection counts, people making left turns, throughs, rights. We counted all those for our analysis. And we're just going to highlight a few here. We have, on Louise Avenue, for instance, we have about 25,000 vehicles a day. 49th Street, about 15 to 18,000 vehicles a day. Western Avenue, about 18,000 vehicles a day in some segments, up to over 20,000 in other segments. But the real big kicker here is 41st Street. 38,000 vehicles a day go over the 41st Street Bridge. One of the busiest streets in the state of South Dakota, so a lot of traffic to move. Level of service descriptions. Now, today I'm not going to throw a lot of numbers at you. I'm going to try to be informative and not confuse you with numbers. But we're going to talk about how roadways work, how they operate based on level of services. And really, it's just a grading system for traffic flow. Now, if I indicate or show you that a roadway operates at level service A or B, conditions are going to be pretty good. Free flow, you're not going to have to be stopped very much. If conditions are level service C or D, they're starting to go down a little more. You're starting to see some congestion. We would classify level service D as being a fair congestion. But if we start getting into level service E and F, conditions are really starting to degrade, and you're seeing a lot of congestion and a lot of stop traffic. So what's taking place on the streets within our study area right now? We've got this little bar chart that we put together, existing traffic capacity. And we have on the left side of the screen, we have a bar chart that has going up as level service A, B, C, D, E, and F. And that's for a 4-lane divided roadway or a 4-lane roadway, typical to 49th, 57th, or Minnesota Avenue. So trying to set in your mind how level of service works or to give you a comparison. If you're driving down 49th Street, I said before we have about 15,000 to 18,000 vehicles per day that drive on that road. You're in about level service B, so conditions are pretty good. You're going from Western Avenue over to Louise. Conditions are pretty good. You don't have to stop very much. 57th Street and Louise Avenue, we're over 20,000 vehicles a day, and you're starting to experience more congestion. I think everybody can realize that. But you get to Minnesota Avenue, we're about 30,000 vehicles a day, and the congestion worsens. It takes longer to drive down Minnesota Avenue than, let's say, 49th Street, so just visualize that in your head. That's 30,000 vehicles a day. On the right side of the screen, we have another bar chart here for a 6-lane roadway, and that would be consistent with 41st Street and 12th Street. Those are our 6-lane roadways in town. And we have the same corresponding level of service, and then on the side we have the daily volume. So we're running about 38,000 to 40,000 vehicles on 12th Street and 41st Street. And I think everyone would agree that classification of level service D is probably fair. They're not all times, great conditions out there, but they're okay. They're fair conditions. Vehicles aren't stopped. Granted, Christmas and a few of the holidays we have some major congestion, but for the traveling public during the week, things operate pretty well. So let's hop right into our options. Option 1, maintain 4 lanes of traffic over the bridge, 2 lanes per direction. And really, just to set your mind, 41st Street, 7 lanes, 3 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane. The study steps for option 1, we're going to review a sequencing layout, basically to make sure that it's feasible to build the bridge in phase construction. We're going to determine the existing traffic conditions. We're going to look at the existing traffic conditions and compare them against the conditions during construction, and then we're going to discuss the results. So we have our sequencing layout for phase 1, and these are really our initial thoughts that we put together, and then we talked to some contractors, but let's just go through our initial thoughts here. Under phase 1, we're going to construct the north half of the bridge. On phase 1, we're going to put traffic on the existing south half of the bridge. Now, if you look at the bottom of the screen, we have a typical section. We show 4 lanes of traffic on the right side, and that's the existing south portion. And then we're going to have traffic on those 4 lanes. We're going to build the new bridge on the north side, phase construction. And you can kind of see right in the center we have a difference in elevation. The new bridge is moving up a couple feet in places. So we're going to have to use concrete barrier to protect that because we have a difference in grade. So we need to use some concrete barrier out there to protect it. So let's kind of walk through our sequencing layout here, going from the left of the screen or from the west. On the north side of the road, we have a little strip retail center. And so to get traffic in and out of there during construction, we're going to have to build a new driveway, probably about straight across from Westport Avenue, or even maybe a little bit further to the west, trying to maintain access for that little retail business. We have a couple driveways that we're going to need to close because we're going to be working in that area on the north side. And then the existing driveway for the auto dealership there, we're also going to have to close during construction because the congestion at those 4 11-foot lanes, we're going to have concrete barrier on one side. If you have these driveways that are open and you have someone, let's say, let's go in westbound and they want to take a left, well, they take a left, there's no turn lane there, and we're really going to have some capacity issues because vehicles are just going to start backing up. So that's a few of the driveways that we're going to close. We have a couple locations that will probably need to restrict left turns, one being on Westport because it's going to be very difficult for vehicles going north on Westport to take a left and try to traverse through the existing traffic control devices that we'll have out there. So we want to make it safe. Same thing on the other side. It'll be awful difficult for the vehicles to make left turns. But those are decisions that we're going to keep looking at as we go through the final design. You know, right now we're just kind of in the concept design, but it's just some of our initial thoughts as we move forward. Now we're going to the east side of the bridge here. Same thing. We're constructing the north half, traffic on the south half. We're going to be closing the driveway on the north side, kind of the access that goes to the backside of O'Gorman. On the south side, we have an existing driveway access for the Olive Garden. We'll look at closing that during construction. And then initially, kind of understanding that we have a pretty good retail business center there. We got some restaurants. You know, we're really trying to maintain a left turn lane into those businesses. So you can kind of see, initially we're reviewing putting in the left turn lane, keeping the westbound lanes a little further north, and allowing a location that we can store some of those vehicles to maintain access to that development. As we keep going, and as Chad alluded to, we talked to quite a few contractors as we went through this process. And one of the main things that we heard from almost every one of them is under this type of construction, we really need to put barrier around the whole side that they're working on because we have 38,000 vehicles that use this street a day. We need to protect that construction area. We don't want people driving in areas that they shouldn't. And they said the only way you can assure that is to put concrete barrier up. So we kind of drafted in some green lines, and you can see those. Those are kind of where we're thinking that we're going to put the concrete barrier. The other thing that we learned from the contractor is they said we need this window, 50 to 75 foot, behind the area that we're constructing. We need a place to put our paver. We need a spot to park our payloaders. Just some, not a large area, but we need to be able to have like a little setup area for our construction. So when we incorporate their thoughts, it kind of changes how we look at this area. Our westbound lanes start pulling further south, and we start losing some of the room that we had before that we wanted to use for that left turn lane. So what that ends up telling us is we're not so sure exactly what we can accommodate for access there. A lot will have to do with where the actual bridge limits end up being. So right now with the profile grade, we're not exactly sure where that boundary is going to be, where we need the barrier, but some of the left turns we'll probably have to restrict just for safety reasons. Sequence and layout for phase 2, we're switching. We're going to put traffic on the north half of the bridge, and we're going to construct the south half of the bridge. You can see on the typical section, now things are starting to line up. So the bridges are going to be at the same elevation, traffic on the new portion of the bridge. The west side of the structure really pretty similar. We're going to have the retail business on the north use that driveway that we constructed. We still have some driveways that are closed on the north. We're still probably going to restrict some left turns off of Westport and off of the driveway. And we may even have to restrict left turns going into that retail business as well, just depending on how much room we have to deal with at the end of those construction areas. Again, we're going to go to the east side of the bridge, traffic on the north half, construct the south half of the bridge. Still, we're going to be closing a couple of accesses. Again, we're trying to accommodate that access into that little retail businesses. We got restaurants. We're trying to keep access open, so we looked at an option with the left turn lane again. And after, again, talking with our contractors, we kind of went back and looked at the approach again, and we need to utilize that concrete barrier, give the contractor some additional room. We really don't know what we're going to be able to accommodate for left turns under this scenario, but it doesn't look all that good. It's hard to get vehicles out of those areas that they can take a left turn across 5 or 6 lanes. It takes a long time. Congestion is going to be heavy. So we'll probably have to restrict some of those movements, but we're going to keep the driveways right in, right out at a minimum. Hopefully we can learn some more and do some more, but We'll place a lot of signing encouraging people to use Kiwanis Avenue over to the back access rather than making left turns off busy 41st Street. But like I said, this is our initial input. We're going to dig more into it as we get into final design. Let's talk about the traffic conditions, existing versus 2 lanes in each direction. Now this graphic here really represents our AM peak hour results. And we have a couple little boxes, so let's go through the legend quick. Our first box on the left is our existing conditions level of service. So it has an A, B, C, D, E, or F in the box, and that's just the level of service under existing conditions. The right box is partial closure. That's the level of service that we're seeing with 2 lanes in each direction over the structure. So if you go around our study area for existing versus 2 lanes in the AM peak hour, you're going to see that almost every intersection is exactly the same. And the reason for that is 2 lanes in each direction that can actually handle the AM peak periods. And if you go out there now, it's kind of funny. You can stand out by the mall, and you kind of see from people coming from Marion over to the interstate, it's very busy, and there's a lot of congestion. They get on the other side of the bridge, and they're going on 41st Street really good. You know, the congestion is really on the other side of the interstate. And so during the AM peak hour, we can handle those volumes with 2 lanes in each direction. The PM peak hour, things change a little bit. Now we start having intersections that don't work as well because we can't maintain all that traffic on just 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, and which makes perfect sense because we have 6 lanes out there and they're there for a reason. So if you start going around the study area now, you start seeing D's turn into F's, E's turn into F's. So we're starting to have some congestion, but the good thing in this scenario is most of our congestion is really maintained on Western, 49th, and Louise. That's where we're seeing the people kind of reroute to or divert to. And although we're getting some increases in delays, they're not all that bad. So this is a feasible solution, 2 lanes in each direction. We can phase it. So let's look at some of our conclusions. The AM peak hour results indicate that phased construction approach, 2 lanes in each direction, has little effect on the level of service of the roadways. The PM peak, however, for phased construction would cause reduced level of service along Western, 49th, and Louise, basically due to those vehicles that can't get across a bridge that are diverting. And we do notice some areas other in the study area that are having problems, but for the most part, it's really confined to the streets adjacent to 41st Street. Under the phased construction approach, most of the congestion is experienced in the afternoon hours, 3 to 6. That's when our peak is the highest. We'll probably have some congestion during noon hour with all the people running to lunch, but it's mainly going to be focused in the afternoon. Geometric improvements at the intersections of 49th Street and Western Avenue, 49th Street and Louise, and we'll talk about 57th Street and Marion Road as well, would minimize the additional delay encountered. So we looked at those intersections and how they are impacted. Then we also looked at, well, if we added a right turn lane or a left turn lane, what would that do to the delay? And we found that with some very minor improvements, we can get those intersections, even during construction, to almost operate like they did before. And 57th Street and Marion Road, in the options that we're looking at, we also see that we're going to have this small percentage that divert no matter, they just don't want to go through the construction area. And we see that a lot of people want to use 57th Street. And, you know, as they're coming from the west side of town, we're seeing a lot of people use Marion Road over to 57th Street, and we're starting to see some congestion there. So doing some improvements at that intersection would be well warranted. And if we do these geometric improvements at these locations, we basically get a lot of bang for our buck because most of the improvements are needed already. So we can do them now for construction to help, but we can also actually improve conditions after construction. So some phased construction advantages, impacts to the adjacent arterials, 49th, Western, Louise, 12th Street, and the AM peak hour are insignificant, really. Delays increase on the diversion route, Western to 49th and Louise, but most of the other study intersections experience little change, like I said, in the PM hours. The city engineering staff. Now, on all your construction projects, you have your city engineering, your traffic staff that's going out, and they're playing with the controllers, and they're updating timing plans, making it better for all of us to get to work and get home. And under this scenario, really, just with the limited staff that's up there to do that, they can handle this because we think a lot of the intersections, we know where they're going to be. They're probably going to be more than a handful, so they can adjust those timings to help things out. Businesses are anticipated to favor the phased construction option, and really that's just from all the projects I've been on, if we can keep traffic moving in front of their business, they seem to be happier. So that's really my observation. That's definitely not gospel, but that just comes from the projects I've worked on. Delays during off-peak hours will be minimal, as 2 lanes in each direction have enough capacity to facilitate the traffic volumes. And that's important because we have an AM and a PM peak, and we have probably 20 hours of the day where the volumes are a lot lower. So if we can accommodate those volumes and not increase the delay all that much, that's beneficial to the traveling public. Some disadvantages, of course, we always have some. The total time frame of construction will be longer, approximately 1 to 2 months under the phased approach. The bridge width actually increases slightly under the phased construction, so we can incorporate 2 lanes in each direction for the duration of the construction project. And the overall cost of the bridge construction, it may increase under the phased construction option. It's not going to be much, but it could be increased just because our bridge is a little bigger. Option 2, close 41st Street between Louise Avenue and Kiwanis Avenue during construction. Again, we're going to go through the study steps, review sequencing layout, determine existing traffic conditions and compare them against what happens when it's a full closure, and then we're going to discuss the results. The sequencing layout is much simpler for this option. Really, we're going to go in there and we're going to close the entire structure. We're going to detour traffic at 41st Street and Kiwanis. We're going to build a couple driveways so we can get people in and out of their businesses, and we're going to put a lot of signs up and down the interstate that say 41st Street is going to be very congested, the bridge is closed, stay away. So we need to take that traffic and put them on other routes. So what are the traffic conditions when we look at existing versus full closure? Now, we got the same legend. This is the AM peak hour results, but now our boxes change a little. Our first box is the existing conditions, and our second box is the full closure. So we're looking at level of services, A, B, C, D, E, or F, versus the full or versus existing. And what we start to find out very soon, even in the AM results, is almost all of our intersections are going from, we're changing at least 2 level of service conditions. Our delays at some locations are increasing 500 seconds. So we have a lot of problems when we try to push 38,000 vehicles on roadways that are already busy. So in the AM, we're learning that things don't look all that good. So now we go to the PM, and realistically, things just look that much worse. Now, almost every intersection, at least in the box that we're looking at, is starting to fail, and really this ravels through the area. It's not just what we're looking at here, it's really the whole study area. We're having many, many problems trying to keep these roads up and working. So let's go to some of our conclusions. The AM peak hour results and PM peak hour results indicate that a full closure alternative would cause significant delays on our study area streets. Based on the traffic patterns, individual intersections throughout the study area will experience additional delay. And as I talked before, the traffic engineering staff, it'd be difficult for them to just run and try to change timings at all these different controllers and keep things running as well as they can. There's just going to be too many problems. And to get to the last one here, traffic capacity to the extent needed to facilitate a flow closure, it doesn't exist out there. So things are just going to break down to a point that we can't recover from. We're going to go through a little simulation view here, and we're going to start at 41st and Western. We're going to kind of work our way down to 49th and Western, across on 49th, and work our way on Louise back up to 41st Street. Okay, so we have traffic that's on the road that you're looking at right there is Western Avenue coming from 41st Street, and you can see vehicles starting to queue. The intersection of 49th and Western is queued in every direction. And you kind of see the queues start to converge on 49th over by the river from both Louise and Western. When we get to 49th and Louise, the intersection is very backed up, very congested. We start seeing queues all the way up to almost 41st Street. So under our build conditions, as I stated, things just don't look very good trying to maintain traffic with the bridge completely closed. Okay, some advantages of the full closure. The construction timeline, we can't forget about that. It's likely 1 to 2 months less if the bridge is closed. So the contractor has the full reign of the construction area, they can build the bridge faster, no question about it. The bridge cost maybe is a little lower, and really that's just because the bridge is a little smaller. The traffic volumes on 41st Street are approximately 38,000 vehicles per day across the existing structure. Diverting the magnitude of traffic for any amount of time will just cause significant delays. Safety concerns exist when intersections operate poorly. the intersections that you're having problems with in town now, if they're not operating well, you're getting concerns, citizens saying, there's a lot of accidents here, we need to do something. Traffic engineering staff, like I said, they can't effectively deal with that type of congestion. And it's likely that the public will have a lot of outcry if we close the bridge completely, because so many routes will be congested, and that's just the way it is. And then, as I stated in the beginning, we're going to look at user cost as well. What does it cost the daily commuters to work around this construction? And we look at the bridge under partial. Sorry about that. Under a partial closure, and just at a minimum, looking at just travel time and fuel, we're looking at about $1,600 a day for our commuters. And if we look at a full closure, in extra travel time and fuel used, we're closer to $5,700. And these are just minimum numbers. There's many more things that you could add into them, but this is just fuel and time. So with this, I'll pass the laser pointer over to Steve, and he'll talk about some of the bridge materials.
Thank you, Jason. And I'd also like to thank you for taking the time to listen to this and move forward, I guess. Jason had talked about the traffic phase of it and looking at if we could close versus not close, knowing based on the traffic volumes and the level of service that the problems we would have, we looked at structures on a phased construction. The first thing we looked at is what kind of a method and materials can we use that are used throughout the United States to speed up the construction. How do we change from the typical construction that you see today around South Dakota and using materials and speed it up? First, before I move on, I'll use some terms. The pier and the abutment make up the substructure. The pier is what you see the beams sitting on as you move across the bridge. The abutment is basically the point between the approach and the bridge. The superstructure is made up of the beams, either the steel or the concrete beams, and the deck. So when I talk about super or substructure, you'll have an understanding with that. The bridge replacement options that we looked at a baseline for the substructure. We looked at a baseline construction. What do we typically see occurring around Sioux Falls on a typical bridge construction? Then we looked at some accelerated methods, precast abutments, precast piers, and a driven H-pile pier. Then for the superstructure options, again, we used a baseline construction, what you typically see with the bridges that are constructed around Sioux Falls. And then we looked at three other options: a pre-stressed concrete girder, a girder with a precast deck panel, and then a concrete box girder. We'll go over those quickly. The baseline construction for substructure for a pier, especially over on the Sioux River, we would have to drill or drive on the picture to the left. We have to drive sheet piling that goes below the scour depth. During a high water elevation, we'll have scour at the piers. We determine that, and we have to go down below that. Typically on the Sioux River, on previous projects, it's been 14, 15 feet below the elevation of the water. Then, once we get to the bottom, the elevation, as you can see the middle picture, we've dug it out, then we drive our piling, then we pour our footing, and then the next picture we pour or build our wall. Then we have to remove the sheet piling prior to setting the beams, just because of the sheet piling are 15, 20 feet long, we wouldn't be able to pull them out. Typical construction on this, we're looking at a base of probably 20 days per pier, per phase. Now, we've got two piers. We won't add 40 days per phase. We'll be able to overlap it, but we're looking at 25 to 30 days just for getting ourselves out of the water. So that gives you an idea of the baseline of what it would take. At the abutment, it isn't as intense. The abutment is basically driven at grade or close to grade. We drive the piling, then we pour a base with the steel, and we set the beams on that. Then we pour a back wall. That typical construction is about $7 or 7 days per phase. So we don't see a huge time concern on the abutment, especially with the approach work that has to be done at the same time. However, we did look at an accelerated substructure. This, we would drive the piling similar to the cast-in-place abutment. Then we would use precast panels. Precast meaning that it's built, constructed off-site, and then hauled onto site and placed. And along with the time commitment or time that we see a cast in place or a typical abutment being built, we also have concerns. It's not used a lot around the United States, especially in the northern climates. We know of Wisconsin has 2 test bridges that they're trying it on. Both of them are county roads with low traffic count, so we're concerned about that. So at this point, we're leaning or looking towards going to the cast in place or typical abutment construction. At the piers, however, we are looking at a precast, or we looked at a precast pier cap. That we have seen more of in the United States, especially in the northern climates with the chemicals and the salt. An option that we're looking at is allowing the contractor the option of going with a precast or a cast in place to let him determine what benefits and what is the best operation for his operations. Another substructure option we looked at was, in order to avoid having to dig that cofferdam out, the going the 15, 20 feet below, is going with strictly a H-pile pier. We would drive the piling and drive it up to the top where the pier cap would be. Then we'd place either a cast in place or a precast pier cap on that. The benefit is now we don't have to dig out the cofferdam and then take out the cofferdam. We will have to, on this option, we would pour a concrete wall basically around the pier, the H-piles. 2 reasons. The first reason is aesthetics. We don't really want to have just a bunch of H-pile along the piers. But the more important reason is that with the Sioux River and high water, debris, and we do not want debris getting stuck within the H-pile in the gaps, because it could back up the water upstream from that. And also with the debris and the ice flow, we could damage the H-pile, so the concrete would also be a protection on that. That was the options we looked at the substructure. The options we looked at in superstructure, again, we looked at a baseline bridge, which is exactly the type of bridge that's out there right now, a steel beam bridge with a cast-in-place traditional deck, meaning that we put whalers between the beams, put plywood down, and then we put 2 mats of steel, pour the concrete, and that's our superstructure at that point. With our baseline, the steel beam method, we're looking at probably 2.5 months per phase. So on a phase construction as this, that's 5 months of just setting beams, getting the deck ready and pouring the deck and curing it before we can switch and start on the other side. It also, with the price, steel is the most expensive beam that we looked at $3.5 million just for the superstructure, the beams and the deck is what we're looking at for a price for that. The next option we looked at, instead of the steel beam, look at a pre-stressed concrete girder beam. Benefits of that is it's a cheaper beam. It also, some of the contractors that we talked to, in fact all the contractors we talked to, discussed the concern of getting delivery of the steel beams and affecting the total overall schedule. With the concrete beams, the pre-stressed concrete beams, none of the contractors had that concern because the fabricators can basically put it off to the side and be able to prefab immediately as soon as the bid has been let. With that, we looked at the traditional decking methods as a second baseline. With this one, we're looking at 2 months per phase, so we saved basically a month on the total construction, going from 5 months to 4 months. And the price, just the beams and the deck, is around the $2.4 million. Option 3, we looked at superstructure again with the pre-stressed beams. However, then we looked at using a precast deck panel. What those deck panels are approximately 8 inches thick. They lay them basically end to end, and we tie them together. Then we put a wearing surface over the top of it, a 3-inch wearing surface that protects the panels and is a smooth driving surface for the commuting traffic. That's where we have a big significant savings in time because we do not have to do all of the traditional decking. And we've dropped it down to 1 month per phase, so we've knocked it down to 2 months total for the setting the beams and decking and getting a surface and switching sides. The price of that is basically the same as a pre-stress, about $2.4 million. The last option we looked at is a pre-stressed concrete box girder. What that is if you look at a box culvert, a square box, it's 4 foot wide, 6 foot tall, hollow in the middle. And hopefully you can see it. It's basically a smooth bottom. The nice thing about that is, with the bike path, you don't have the beam with a gap or a whole hollow area where you see up to the deck. It's flat completely across. With this one, we would also put a 5-inch overlay on this one to protect the precast box culvert or box girders from the chemicals. That one is we look at probably from the time we set the beams to being able to have the concrete or the deck poured is 21 days. So now we're down to, we've saved another 7 days or 14 days, a half a month on total construction with this option. Our final recommendations that we are moving forward with is using the driven steel pile piers, putting the wall in. We'd come back after the bridge has been opened up and come in underneath and put the wall in. Cast in place abutments, pre-stressed concrete box girder, and then a cast in place concrete overlay. The last thing, or the next thing we discussed or looked at when we did this study is, okay, we've looked at what kind of materials and methods can we improve construction. Now, what kind of bidding methods or contracting methods will help to speed up the construction as well, help the contractor to basically give incentive. The interim completion date is a benefit. We don't see a benefit on this bridge. What we see is this project, the goal is to open it back up to 7 lanes. It's not really a great or an incentive to say, okay, once you take down 4 lanes, you need to get these 4 lanes open in so much time. It kind of limits the contractor to what he wants to do for best for his schedule. So we feel it's more important to give them an overall completion date, get the bridge open to 7 lanes, or get the road up open to the 7 lanes that we need. The lane rental, that is an option we are considering following the opening of the 7 lanes. The lane rental, what it is the contractor actually rents the lanes. When he has to close a lane to do stuff behind the back of curb, he would rent that lane for closure. And we also, with the lane rental, we can dictate when they can close it, say 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock, so we're not affecting the peak traffic times, and then after 6 o'clock. So that is something we look at possibly of helping us once the bridge has been done, but we don't see it as to speed up the total construction timeline. The design-build option is an option that the design and construction are going on at the same time. An example would be the 229 project was a design-build. What it does is it speeds up the total delivery time. The state identified that they needed to increase the capacity on 229. They also needed to do the construction or reconstruction of I-29 from 90 going south. They knew they couldn't do both at the same time. They thought, well, if we go design build, we can get 229 done before our scheduled scheduled construction on 29. Otherwise, they would have had to wait for 229, and knowing the traffic volumes, they just couldn't wait. So that's where the benefit of design build is. It does allow for maximum contractor innovation because he's working directly with the designer. The designer works for the contractor, meeting the specs and the requirements of the owner, but still designing to the strengths of that contractor. The disadvantage is higher construction costs because there's not any quantities. They're bidding on an estimate or a guess of what it's going to take them to do. There's also fewer bidders because of the higher risk. The next option we looked at was cost plus time bidding, or A plus B bidding. What that is, it involves time as a factor in selecting the low bid. The A portion is our typical bidding method where we have the unit times the unit cost. We have a price, and the contractor adds that up, and that's the typical price that we see. The B portion now is they bid in the number of days it's going to take them to finish the project. That times the user cost, minimum right now we're looking at about $7,700. So that would add to their A, and that would be their bid. The benefit of that is it accelerates the project. The contractor now spends a lot of time before the bid is even made figuring out how he can speed up the project to improve his B portion of it. And also is the shortest of all the contracting methods we looked. It has the best opportunity to speed up the project. Some of the disadvantages is we have to balance our user cost to a defendable user cost is what we need. Meaning, if we have, with that user cost, the city needs to be able to defend it if a contractor who didn't get the bid says, I don't understand where that number came from. We have an increased level of inspection, meaning because now the contractor has to meet the days he bids, he's probably bidding 6 to 7 10-hour days versus a normal 8-hour day. So we have a lot more hours during the week to get this project done. The other one I should mention is we have increased claims. The biggest hindrance on that is like a utility. We need a utility to relocate. He comes in a little late. It delays the contractor a couple of days. The contractor is going to have a claim for those 2 days that was delayed. So that's where you'll see it's imperative that we meet and discuss with the utilities on how we schedule that. The last method we looked at was the incentive-disincentives. This one is we can award the contractor for completing early. Also, we can deduct pay for late completion. With that A+B bidding method, say the city sets or establishes a max number of days a contract can be completed in, 160 days is what about the area we're looking at now. If a contractor comes in and bids 150 days, that becomes the contract time. If he completes it in 140 days, he'll get, like we said, a minimum of, first of all, we're looking at probably a initial, if he meets his days, if he gets it done in 150 days, we're looking at an incentive payment there. Plus, we'll give him an incentive for every day ahead of that, so much per day times the number of days he accelerates it. Likewise, if he does not meet it, we will penalize him that user cost that's be determined times the number of days he is late. The advantages is project acceleration. The contractor strives to complete on time and even ahead of time. And again, the disadvantages, the unforeseen problems, hazardous material that they uncover when they remove the surface, which I don't foresee, but just something like that, or a utility delay that could cause them to not be able to do something, and they would ask for those days to be added. And our final recommendations for the contracting method is to use the A+B bidding along with an incentive-disincentive clause. In summary, our recommendation summary that we are moving forward with is a phased construction, then with the bridge itself, an accelerated construction with H-pile piers, giving the contractor the option of cast-in-place or precast caps, a cast-in-place abutment, and concrete box girder with a cast-in-place deck, and then with our bidding method or contracting method of A+B with incentive-disincentive. And what's next? The project scope will have intensive public outreach. Not only do we need to meet with the businesses adjacent to or along the 41st Street corridor, we also need to let the public know of what's coming up in 2010 so they can maybe even start planning what their alternate route may be. And we also want to finalize construction phasing. We want to make sure that the days that we put in the contracts documents is a reachable day count, and not something that contractors will, say that this is impossible and bid disincentive into it immediately. So we have an established day that we can bring forth. The project schedule for 2009, we want to we're going to move forward with final design this next month. Public outreach, we want to begin this month, early April. Utility coordination has to start immediately, so we can start allowing them to start budgeting their relocations and plan where they're going to go. The bid letting right now is scheduled for October, which will allow the contractor to basically order and get all of the material to when they begin. We're looking at construction starting in March, April timeframe. That'll a lot depend on how wet the winter is or how heavy the snow is and the flow that we'll have in the Sioux River within September construction. The one thing to remember, if we have a wet spring and they can't get in to drive the piling and stuff, we're just going to move. We'll still have the same number of days of closure. It's just that they may not get to start as early. With the intent, we know that we need to be done in early November just because of the holiday season, the holiday shopping. With that, I open it up for questions.
Councilor Bennigan.
Jason or Steve or Mark, I'm not sure who could answer this, but my first question is, on all the options, all the design work, all the things that you guys have considered, Does all of this have to be approved by the Corps of Engineers before we put this out for bid to make sure that it meets the standards for the flood control issues?
The only thing that they had, that their requirement was our minimum bottom of beam or bottom of bridge. They had established that elevation, and we've kept above that with any of the options. And that's really the only thing that we have had to meet is the minimum elevation and an opening area.
Well, obviously, we'd hate to put all the effort and make this thing happen and then find out toward the end that we don't meet their FEMA requirements.
Yep. And they will review just to verify the elevations.
Councilor Knudsen.
Does it matter very much as far as how much does it matter as far as the 38,000 cars if we if school were out, if the school session was out? What do we think that is? I don't have a clue.
On 41st Street, the school traffic is, when you look at some of the streets, the school traffic, it's really amazing between when summer is in session, when school's in session, the difference in the traffic volumes. We don't see that variation as much on 41st Street. So we do see some benefit, but nothing that'll affect really our evaluation. So,
May I just one? And then I guess I'm wondering, even though it's not typically done, could we or would we or does anyone ever consider requiring, expecting, or whatever the right verb is, a contractor or a group of contractors to work 24 hours a day? I obviously mean with different crew people, and obviously light the area well enough so they know what they're doing. And I mean different crew people, not tired people that don't know what they're doing by then.
That is something that definitely will be considered. It's going to be probably up to the Department of Health, I believe, has to issue a noise permit, and that's something that could be looked at. They may come to the contractor during their review prior to bidding, ask the city if this is a possibility, and then maybe the city will put some requirements on, well, they can't be driving piling, some of the louder, noisier parts of the construction. But that's something, it's going to be up to them to determine if it's a benefit.
Okay, and I would think, and I've no experience at all at this, but I mean, I think noise is important, but I would just guess for the convenience of those businesses and those many people that are inconvenienced greatly, that I just assume that they would be able to live with a little bit of extra noise if they could get the huge project done much, much faster. But
yeah, and it's not really the businesses we're concerned about. It's the apartments that are just north of 41st Street along the river. There's also apartments just south of Billion. That would be where the concern would be, is breaking concrete or breaking, I don't know if you remember 229, all the complaints that were coming in when they were breaking the concrete surfacing. And that's something that we really need to weigh in on that benefit.
sure, and I just assume we could have communication with those people if we ever wanted to consider that. I guess another question I have is, for this larger project, and again, badly needed project, I'm very supportive of getting it done, is would we ever want to consider involving several contractors as opposed to one, and have it, and again, with an overall umbrella supervision, of course, but I mean, get several large contractors involved to do pieces of the project and get it done as well and as quickly as humanly possible.
And I think that's what the incentive and the A plus B method is going to help, is that the contractors are going to work together and possibly have two contractors come in to drive the piling for the two piers at the same time, versus having one crew start and then have to move on. That's definitely stuff that we feel with the contracting method is going to encourage that. The problem with this is it's a limited space as well. We don't have a spread out amongst, over a mile.
And my last question, again, I really appreciate the presentation and all the effort that's gone into this, because I obviously am not knowledgeable about building bridges in any fashion, but I was wondering also, like, when you say March, April, I would just think, having lived in South Dakota a long time, that March was a pretty difficult month to get any serious construction done. I mean, it seems to me that April, May would be a lot more logical, but what am I missing on that?
The biggest benefit on this one is because it's not a wide open, the part of the benefit is also a negative in other facets, but it's a bridge where if you get a snow day or a rain day, it's a crane driving piling, or they're working in an area where it's not they don't have to dry out the surfacing or dry out the material, and that allows us to be able to start earlier in the year. Like I said, the contractor's going to make the final decision. We're going to open it up so that they can begin in March. He's going to look at the weather and look at the spring thaw. He doesn't want to start, tear it down, and then have a lot of delays, because we're not going to give him that benefit on those contracting days.
Yeah, I guess, okay. I just think in March, we just typically have so much extra snow and even blizzards and so forth that I guess I trust the contractor to know what he's doing about this. But on the other hand, I'd hate to, it just seems to me that we would, from the beginning, from the get-go, we would increase the amount of inconvenience to so many citizens by even tearing up anything in March, and I guess that was what I was trying to say.
This year, we could have easily done it. It's been fairly nice this month. A couple cold days and stuff, but this week, we would have been able to move forward, or the contractor would have been able to move forward. And the benefit of the H-pile, we don't have to worry as much about a heavy thaw and a high flow, because we can keep the cranes, they can stay somewhat out of the river channel.
Councilor Costello.
Regarding your summary as far as the recommendations, just going through them real quick, the phase construction, okay, it sounds like closing down the bridge really, after you look at the numbers, just wasn't realistic, wasn't going to happen, so kind of limited there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then under the accelerated construction, you've got H-pile piers, okay, that's got to be faster than the alternatives, I believe you said. The cast-in-place abutments, you could probably go with the precast, but that sounded like it was less tried and a little less comfort level with that.
Less comfort level, especially with as important as 41st Street Bridge is.
Okay. And then box girders we pick up 7 days versus box girders versus what the other pre-stressed beams, yep. And that. So that's a faster process. So really, from all known construction techniques, was there been any quicker way to get this accomplished?
Not that we looked at. In fact, we talked to 2 local bridge contractors and 2 region contractors, and they all really like the box girder method because of how fast it's going to go to place the beams and stuff.
Then the other question I was kind of going off of Dee's comments were regarding the workday. What have you seen maybe in other markets where there's been such a high traffic bridge? The reference was in the Omaha bridge. Was there an extension of the workday? Is it an 18-hour day, or is it a 20-hour? What are you talking about?
What we will do is when we say, like as an example, right now we're looking at around about 160 days. We will spell out how we calculated it. If it's going to be, we're looking at minimum of a 10-hour workday, 6 days a week. Now they may come in and say we're going to work 2 10s. You're not going to do a lot in the evening with the lighting. There's some things you can do, but yeah, it's not going to be a continuous. But we will spell out, as an example, 6 10-hour days. That was how this was based.
And some contractors actually will do 2 10-hour.
They may come
in
with that approach. Yep.
And again, that's more. What makes that decision? Is that a city-led initiative, or is that through the Public Works and Health Department and what have you, or is that a contractor-led?
It'll be contractor-driven, and a lot of it will be determined on if the incentive is at a level that he determines it's worth paying overtime and paying the extra labor to be brought in to work on that project.
Okay. And that brings right into my next question. Were you involved on the Phillips Avenue project? Did you do the engineering?
No.
Okay.
No.
The only reason we had conversation was the incentive plan for that was some $10,000 a day, and the incentive on this appears to be $7,700. I'm just trying to figure out how we rationalize the difference with the traffic loads.
Different factors go into play when we look at doing a downtown project, or if we're doing a project like 41st Street. key difference downtown is the only access to those buildings while it's under construction is by foot, whereas from the basis of the businesses that are along this corridor, for the most part, they have parking lots that will be able to be reached. As far as the level of incentive, there is some guidelines that we go by, and there's just been an initial review of what some of that basis might be. When we looked at Phillips Avenue at the beginning, when some of the initial cost estimates came out, that came out to be an overall incentive of about 7%. And then just through competitive bidding process, the incentive is about 10. The initial review of this incentive is about 3%, but understand that's very beginning. Some of the comments that Councilor Knutson had mentioned, what makes people actually go to 2 10-hour shifts, that is a balance of how much innovation can they put in, what is their work schedule. The nice thing about a bridge is that they're in one location and they can truly have 2 shifts of people working, and it doesn't complicate with how we try to do some of our roadway work and with trying to manage 2 different shifts, having adequate lighting, things like that. It's easier to light a bridge structure if they take that route. The key will be is having a strong incentive so that they can balance out what those operational changes would be. Some of the other basis of starting in March, that's the strength of using precast materials, because those are actually made inside a factory setting like Gage Brothers, and then they're cured inside, and then they get transported to the project. The other piece is that we do expect that there will be some night work, because as these large box beams come on site, that takes a lot of space, and so usually you want to do that work for the majority when there's no traffic out there in the middle of the night. And so sometimes those transports of those beams will come in the middle of the night, and they'll all be set so those trucks and transports aren't trying to manage with the traffic during the workday. But understand there is still quite a bit of work to be done as far as how we structure the day count. We just have an initial review of 160 days, which, again, we want to find a reasonable amount, and then we want to make sure contractors find their innovative ways to beat that date substantially, and then also be able to pick up the incentive.
Just have 2 more follow-up questions.
Yep.
It appears that under the methods that we're outlining here, that we really are allowing for maximum contractor innovation, aren't we?
We've tried to do the best we can. The maximum is probably design build, but I think the strength in us having HDR do the work that they've done is they've really done the basis of what design build is, where you already vet through your best options. And so at this point, for us to go design build, I think we'd be paying twice for what HDR has done to this point. They've certainly taken it to preliminary engineering. We will scope them now to go final design and really start to outreach to the community, but also reach these final design decisions. I don't think that noise is going to be an issue as far as showing some, if that's the request of a contractor, we'll certainly do our best to make sure that we inform the residents. We've got apartments north and south of 41st Street, but that is a fairly small window when that pile driving effort actually occurs.
Is there, I think I know the answer to it, but in the theme of no stupid questions, I'll ask it anyways. Is there much work that could be done for the project prior to ever affecting the traffic flow at all by, closing down any lanes? Is there much that can be done ahead of time?
Well,
other than the pre-ordering of the materials and stuff, the actual work on site?
There's a couple of key areas, and that's one of the things that Steve touched on that Jeff Delores has really been vetting through is on any structure there's a lot of utilities. For example, the majority of the electric feed for all the meadows on the river and the mall is hung on that bridge. And so we've got to get that off the bridge between now and next March so they don't have to work under a very compressed time schedule, and they also don't. It's one less thing to for the contractor to manage. Quest is on the bridge, traffic signals are on the bridge. So there's 3 main electric utilities that, when Steve had said, what's one of the next steps is utility coordination's immediate, and we've already started to work with Excel.
My last question for now anyways is regarding there seems to be a large amount of city-owned land around that, particularly in the bike trails and other areas around that. That can be utilized for the staging to help tighten the space requirements on 41st Street, I presume?
It can to a certain extent. The 75 feet that Jason showed in the phasing is still pretty tight as far as the size of equipment and, just all the tools that a bridge contractor and equipment uses, and just daily transports that they'll receive of either concrete or pump trucks. And so it's already very compressed. I would expect that they'll use those areas that are close. We've also discussed trying to rent some land that is close. That would, at least the initial review would be in that south and west corner if there is space available in that parking lot for Phase 2. Unless there's space available on the other side of the bridge.
Not likely.
Councilor Jameson.
Just a few questions.
I know.
I like the looks of the design that you've outlined here. I think you've eliminated those ugly beams, the need for painting, probably, upkeep, a place for pigeons to hide. I like that. I'm not certainly an engineer at all, but it sure looks good, and you've got the timeline worked out. Have you done anything in this design and look to compromise its life or quality in any way?
No, I'll maybe start and then let Steve finish. I think one of the strengths of using precast materials, it's you're taking that field element out of a lot of those key components. And so from our standpoint, when we had our kickoff meeting, we wanted to basically take the best of the Iowa design standards, the Nebraska DOT design standards, and South Dakota, kind of mesh them, and to come up with the fastest but strongest bridge. So that's my 2 cents on it. Anything else? Okay.
How about the height? How much higher are we putting this bridge than the previous, the current
I
bridge?
think it's approximately 3 feet. One of the comments that Councilor Bennigan mentioned was, what review does the Corps provide? When we talk about, on that picture, the lower beam or the bottom side of the bridge, there's a cross-sectional area that the hydraulic engineers are routing the stormwater down the levees and then under the structure. And so they set what they call lowest beam, and then we have a factor above that we raise, so to make sure that if there's trees and other things that can clog, that there's some factor of safety that's provided.
And I was working with Mike Cooper, and he had mentioned a comment that the bike trail's pretty much just going to be shut off, right? There's really no way to move people through or around this area with the traffic there, is there? I mean, it's just a dead end from, so it's...
It is. I think one of the aspects will be even as certain segments of the levees get done, and even underneath this bridge, there's still going to be a significant amount of truck traffic that may be driving on and near those areas, and just to make sure that the bikers are safe. It will, obviously, it's one of the greatest assets we have, and there's not, very good reasonable detours when you have a bike trail system that doesn't cross a road. So it is going to be an impact. I think our hope is let's also get the levees done as fast as possible, get this bridge done, well light the bottom side of the bridge, so when it's done, it's very aesthetically pleasing for the bikers.
Also, is the bridge going to be any wider at all? I mean, is there any extra lanes or walking space?
I think the walking spaces may be a little wider. Is that right? Yeah, the walking spaces will be slightly wider, and that will also help us in the phasing to move traffic onto that area when Phase 2 begins.
And just to make a confirmation, all the businesses that are near there, none of them are going to be shut down or shut off, or they'll still have access. All of them will have access, and even though it might be difficult for us to maneuver, if we've normally frequented those locations, we should still continue, just like Phillips Avenue. those businesses they need us to keep coming back to their stores, even though it might be a little inconvenient.
Right.
I just want to make sure that no business is going to be closed off.
You're right. And the key is that our expectation is to keep right in, right out at a minimum. And then when there is back access opportunities, which there are, and we also have the ability to, kind of the luxury of having O'Gorman, which has good, reasonable access north. And so, we essentially have two main quadrants that we have to accommodate, and we'll work with those business owners closely to make sure that wayfind signing is clear and used. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Staggers.
Yes. Mark, the life of the bridge, how long should this bridge last us?
Well, I think it's been a while since we've talked about this. I think we've said that this bridge was built in the 1960s, and it's certainly, as you drive over it, it's used its useful life. I would expect with today's construction standards that we're going to get at least that long, if not longer, out of this method. So I would expect a baseline of 50 years, and with reasonable maintenance, we'll work to extend that.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, too, in regard to the deck setup, we're going to have wider for pedestrians to go across. Would bicyclists, would they be using the pedestrian, I guess you could say, sidewalk across the bridge, or how the bike's going to get across?
Oh, they certainly can. They do today. They are a little tight, I will say, as you take a family across there with marginal biking experience, and so a little bit wider will be helpful. Obviously, having bike corridors under both sides will be also used. And then there's even safer crossings of the bike trail as you go south of 49th Street. So people have the option to decide which way they cross.
And lastly, right now we're going to have 7 lanes on the bridge. Has there been any thought about the future of maybe actually having another lane added in the, maybe 8 lanes in the future, or to make it wider?
I think each way, east and west of the structure, would be extremely tight constraints. The ability with most bridges is that you can widen them, and so if that day would ever occur that properties were actually purchased and widening was to occur, but there's already some fairly tight constraints, especially in the north and west corner of those properties. And so to expect that a widening would actually be accomplished would be very far east and west of the bridge. I wouldn't expect that. Anything addition to that?
I guess the only thing to add with that would be the traffic trends really on 41st Street with the addition of 49th, 57th Street have actually gone down over time. I'm not saying they're going to maintain that, but that's a built-out area, so increased traffic volumes warranting more lanes is maybe not reasonable at this time.
Oh, okay. And lastly, I guess the contracting method we're using, how does that compare to the contracting method on I-35 in the cities?
I think that was what they used. That was the same method that they used.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson.
I want to thank you guys for all the work that you've done on this, and it's very extensive, and it shows the importance of the replacement of the bridge. And I think everything's been pretty well covered as far as construction time and as far as being able to allow the construction company to work either 24 hours a day or the length of time that they're going to be working. The one thing that I just wanted to comment on is I guess I'm a little disappointed to see a couple newer constructed roads as 49th and 57th taking the amount of traffic that they're taking. I thought that it would be a higher number, and especially it being 4 and 5 lane roads out there, I thought that they would be able to help take up some of the traffic off of 41st Street. And I think that we need to start looking at better ways of constructing those roads so that they can take higher traffic volumes. We're talking one of the fastest growing areas in the city and county, and we're building roads that can handle the traffic out there.
I can add at least a couple of comments to that. I think that's the importance of one of the studies that's underway right now, Counselor, with really 12th Street and 41st Street as the main connections across town. 57th, we need to optimize that capacity all the way across town. I think last year with 2 significant projects helps that. This year, working on 69th Street, you know, the key is we want to make sure that as all those additional traffic trips get generated, they have more options. So items like what Jason said, traffic can actually get reduced because people do find that it's faster to use 229 or it's faster to use 57th or hopefully in the near term more extension of 69th Street and then 85th. And so those things are happening, but they do take a planning process, so I can appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
Councilor Knudsen.
Just a couple of quick comments is, one, actually, I think that Councilor Stager's question about Minnesota, I was thinking exactly the same thing. I think it was a very good question. So there's nothing else that we can learn from our neighbors in the Midwest climate from them replacing Interstate 35 bridge? Is there anything else we can learn from the Minnesota friends and neighbors?
It's not to say that we won't learn more. It's just one of the things we wanted to do is really get through our concept and really into our preliminary stage and then come and tell you before we go to the public. And so HDR, Jeff Delories, and team have a lot of work to get done, and they will continue to vet through these things. Obviously, there's time and there's a lot of questions to get answered, and so we're going to continue to work through those.
And then my last question and comment is again, trying to be very reasonable, but aware of the incredible size of the project, extent of the project is people like me would love to see that project going on 7 days a week. And if it takes more than one contractor, because they don't, 2 or 3 contractors to take pieces of the project and get it done 7 days a week, preferably about 24 hours a day. I mean, if there are more contractors involved, it seems like there'd be less need to pay overtime, and I'm sure that's a concern of theirs, but I'm concerned about the inconvenience for our citizens.
Very good.
Mr. Bennigan.
Mark, in reference to the 49th Street, when is that bypass, if you will, when is that to be extended? Where are we at with that process as far as timing goes?
Well, we've reached an agreement with Sioux Sports.
Okay.
And so that's step one, is preserving the right-of-way. On the other end, which is Minnesota Avenue, we were actually scheduled to build that first section this year. We're wrapping up the design, which would be from Minnesota over to Duluth, and correct that. I will tell you that as you've heard in the past from Director Roanhorst, that we put together contingency plans that are a part of, if sales tax revenues don't come in at the expected rate, we have to identify projects for holds, and that is one that I put forward for a hold, just interim. But we're close. So the first segment was, and we do hope that through the competitive bidding cycles that we're getting on just some of our initial jobs, if we can see enough savings on some of those, that will move that forward, because it's not a significant project dollar-wise.
But it would move traffic.
It would move traffic, and it actually starts the progression of that mile of road. That was one of the key projects between Western and Minnesota that would take some load off 49th Street. 41st Street, and so we're excited to get it started as well.
Councilor Costello.
Just on a related topic, 57th Street from Minnesota to Pembroke, what's the status of that?
We are under design, finalizing the design, and just recently I know Chad and his team met with the area. As just like any project that expands in scope, we did not have that in the plan, and so in managing some of the reduced revenues of the CIP, that's another project that we're waiting to see how our capital plan actually develops here through our bidding cycle between now and the first part of May.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to say probably what's the final comment here, but Gerald and Kenny brought up things about alternate routes and the future of everything, and I got to say that Pat and I were in a meeting here last week, and the subject of 85th Street come up, and I thought that we'd pretty well handled that, and that thing was on track, only to find out that it's not. And, we're talking about reducing traffic on streets and all that. And I just hope, and I'm sure that it's on your mind too, as well as a lot of other fellows in traffic, that we get that 85th Street overpass and that road back on track here, because I know what's going to happen to Sioux Falls down south there. That's the way we're growing, and it's going to be integral to the development and lightening the load on that into town here sooner or later. And unless I miss my mark, 85th Street is probably going to go in before the 69th Street overpass. Would that be correct in your estimation?
I would expect that's true. We have some key meetings this week with the mayor, and so I would, and we are also finalizing our comments on the traffic study that was delivered to us, and we expect to send those off to the consultant and DOT by the end of this week. And so we are obviously want to make sure that there's a good solution, but that it actually stays on track. We are working, one of the key projects is 69th Street this year from the Heart Hospital over to Tallgrass and then south. The next project that will really help move and distribute traffic is the Solberg Overpass. Just with the status of the study, that's one of our concerns, is that the Solberg Overpass stays on schedule, and then vet through and get through the IJR for 85th Street. And the best way to do that, they have developed about 15 alternatives that we are providing comments back to. So I can tell you that it's at the top of our concern as well.
Thank you, Mark. Anything else on this subject? Councilor Anderson.
Just to fall back on Gerald and Dee's suggestions also, as far as giving the contractor some flexibility as far as number of days and hours again. We keep going back to Minnesota and 35. I do travel up to Minneapolis a lot to see family, and there's times where I would get there at 5 o'clock on Friday night. They'd close 35W for the rest of the weekend to finish construction. Now, we have to look at the economic impact for the businesses out there, and the time that we're going to be spending, diverting people on traffic-wise. I think that we really do need to look at being able to be very flexible, and if they do need to close that bridge at times, that we need to be open to that.
Okay, very good.
And anything else for the good of the order? I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation here today, and appreciate your work on that. Any other topics here that any of the councilors have to bring up? Very good. Then we are going to stand adjourned until 7 o'clock. Thank you.